Hey, it's Dan, and welcome to Unified Gaming. So in this one, I want to break down the Archmage, the ultimate Magicka sorcerer PvP build. This thing hits stupidly hard, has awesome defense and sustain, and is probably the best setup you'll find out there, or thereabouts. It is hands down one of my favourite ways to play sorcerer this patch, and it does include scribe skill options. But if you don't have the gold road, I do have non-scribe skills versions too. As for gameplay, I will be posting this in a separate build video, so if you want to see that, do subscribe, and likes and comments do really help. As always, a massive thank you to everyone at Patreon and all the YouTube members who help support the channel. They get exclusive builds, early access to content, and much more. There's details down below. As with this one, what are we doing? For our race, you want to be something with max Magicka. So Breton, Dark Elf, High Elf, really useful. Me personally, Breton helps offset our vampirism, so it's my go-to, but you could change it to a Dark Elf and have really good damage, just change a glyph. Or you could go with something like Argonian or High Elf, just change a few glyphs. The race won't make or break the build, in all honesty. As with the attribute points, we have 64 points in Magicka and 0 in health and stamina. The stats, as you see, is with Death Dealer's Feat. So when Death Dealer's is fully up, we have really high max Magicka, and those recoveries go to almost 2,000, so don't worry about that. It goes up really quick and is always on. Defense wise, you'll see we are really tanky on the back bar, almost 30,000 spell and 26 physical almost, with 2k crit resist. So plenty of defense. Mundus wise, I use the Mage Mundus. This gives us more max resource. That in turn is more damage and bigger shields. And with everything we use, such as the Inner Light, Bound Aegis, etc, this actually is worth more than that 2,000. It is a really big boost. So I would go with the Mage. Yes, the Lover will give you more damage, but it's not massives. And in all honesty, I prefer the extra defense. I'd also say that with the Scribe system, we get Major and Minor Breach, so we get an extra 9,000 penetration that is not shown on this. So when we're on the front bar, we have essentially sort of 14,000 penetration. So lots of penetration here. As for the consumables, I use Artaean Pickled Fish Bowl. This thing is phenomenally good. If you have this, get it. If you play in Cyrodiil, this is the best food in my opinion. If you play in no CP Battlegrounds, do consider Citrus Fillet or Witchmother's Potent Brew, the purple version. They really help. And if you are in Cyrodiil or you don't have Death Dealer's Feat, so you go, I don't have the Death Dealers yet, use Bewitched Sugar Skulls as a stopgap and just change some of the glyphs around. Potion wise, I use Tri-Potions. They give you health, Magicka and stamina. They cover all bases. And if one of those resources goes low, you can pop this and then roll dodge or streak and you're good to go. The other thing to note as well is that this is a pseudo burst heal, especially with the shield, so it really helps keep us alive. You could use more specialized potions if you wish, so something like Detect Potions against Nightblades or Essence of Movability. Those are all really good options. As with the consumables, we also have double dot poisons, but you can change this to a glyph if you wish, so there are different choices there. I want to go through the skills now and kind of show you how that all works and really give you what is happening so you can see it yourself. So for the skills, we are a vampire, as you've probably gathered already. Vampire gives us Undeath. It is a defensive passive. It's really good. Yes, we take more fire damage. Yes, our skills cost more. Undeath gets negated. It negates the fire damage. When we're low health, this is bigger, so this is better. It's essentially 15% when you're half health, which is a defensive set and a bit. It's really strong. The extra cost reduction that we have, the cost increase, sorry, gets negated by the fact that we are a Breton. So again, really good synergy between that. As with the other skills, we are using the following. I have my front bar, and I'm just going to keep my buffs on so you can see all the tooltips because it is quite helpful. So, buffed up with Death Dealers and so on. We have a Sundering Soul of 11,700, almost 12,000. It restores resources and it applies Breach. When you weave this, what will happen is that you can proc Major and Minor Breach. So you'll see in a second that as I weave this, what those penetration buffs will just apply by themselves. And I can just keep weaving this really cheaply. This is without my other set, and I can sustain this really well. So it's a really good spammable. And when we put on our regen set and our buff, it goes up really easy to sustain. It hits really hard. It's also got great sustain because it gives us 1000 magicka every time we cast it. And it's also 1000 cheaper because of the cost reduction on here. So this is actually 1000 to cast. It's really cheap. It also has Major Breach, which means we get a free bar space. So again, really, really nice skill to have. We then use Crystal Fragments, sorry. And when we use Crystal Fragments, when we're in combat, it goes up really high. So our frag is 22,600. It hits like a truck. We then have Hardened Ward. This is a massive shield and a heal. It's an 8.5k heal. It's about 4,000 in PvP with crits 6,000-7,000. The shield is like 15,000 in PvP. It is stupidly large. And this is basically your burst heal, and it's really cheap. You can put this on before the fight. You can put it on during the fight. It's just a great skill. We then have Streak, which will stun people. It also can't be blocked and it does damage. It's also a movement skill. And we have Inner Light as a passive damage boost. It gives us a crit chance. It gives us the ability to pull out Nightblades if they're near us. And on top of this, it gives us more max resource. 5% max magicka here. And if you go down to the Mage Guild, you also get an additional 2% from the Magicka controller passive, meaning we get 7% from this one skill. 7% magicka when you have this much magicka is very, very noticeable. For the ultimate, we are using Shooting Star. This hits really hard, but we don't actually cast this. The reason this is here is simply because of that Magicka controller passive. It's an extra 2% max magicka here. If you don't want to have that and drop it, you could then use on the front bar instead. Energy Overload, which is really good. And you can put a different ultimate on the back bar. Me personally, I would recommend getting used to putting Shooting Star on the front bar just as a passive damage boost. But if you are in group play, then Energy Overload front bar, and you can change the back bar ult to negate. For the back bar, we are using Dark Conversion. We convert stamina into magicka and health, really good. It also gives us minor berserk, some more damage. We have Haunting Curse. You'll notice Haunting Curse with a tooltip. It has a tooltip of 12,000, but when we're on the front bar, it actually scales up. So our magic is almost up to what it is with Death Dealers fully prot. The damage will carry over, so it will actually be this value, 16,000. So it hits really, really hard. And that's because although we apply it on the back bar, when we're on the front bar, it will take this value. So that's 13,000 there. I'll do it this time with the same buffs on, just to show you that it will be less than 13,000. So even though it's on the back bar, it's not like a real punishment, because we can just swap bar and get the boost. So 10,000. So you can see it is a difference. We then have another scribe skill, Warding Contingency. Grants you a damage shield to you and your allies of almost 14,000 for 8 seconds. It scales of max health, which is great. So we now have a skill where we can basically spam this, and we can give shields to allies. And what's nice with this is that it's a way to pseudo heal an ally. It's 8 seconds, so you can put it on before the fight. You can now work in group play. It also has a Gladiator's Tenacity script, which means we have 8% damage reduction whilst this is on. 8 seconds damage reduction is great. And it gives us minor endurance and minor intellect, which is more stamps magicka recovery for 22 seconds. So when we actually put on our sets and we proc the skill, our sustain with that potion is 1500, and with potion 1900 and 1800 respectively. And if you wanted to go and use the citrus fillet, if you need more sustain, we've now got 2500 recovery. It is really, really, really good sustain. So this skill is very, very good. And the reason we can run this skill is because we can get the Major Breach on Sundering Soul. So you do need to have these two skills together. We then have Critical Surge, which will give us Major Sorcery, more damage, and also gives us more passive healing. And we have Bound Aegis, which is just a passive damage boost plus minor resolve and minor protection. So more armor, damage reduction, and max magicka. It's a great skill. And back bar, if you do use shooting star in the front bar, energy overload here. But if you don't use shooting star there, you can change this to suppression field, and this is a really nice one. If you do use the Atronach, just be mindful that it does count as a pet, which means you'd lose your 10% max magicka and stamina and get 10% health when it's up. So I tend to avoid this nowadays just because it messes up with the health and the resources and stuff. So I find suppression field is a better one if you were to go into groups. Now that is the most optimal way to load this build up. If you don't have access to scribing, what do you do? Well, the options you have are as followed. You can go and focus on changing your spammable, Sunder and Soul, to either Crush and Shock if you're in Cyrodiil, or False Pulse. These are both really good skills. Crush and Shock is cheaper and it interrupts at range, so great skill. False Pulse has an AoE cleave if they have a status on them, so again, decent skill. If you want a bit more sort of bursty damage, go down to Psijic Order, Elemental Weapon. This will hit really hard. On top of that, it also has the status effects. So again, it's just more sustained damage. It synergizes with Overload. So when Overload lands, this would also land with the Overload, so you get really good burst there. You do, however, lack that Major Breach, which means that the back Warden skill, Warden Contingency, has to be Elemental Susceptibility. This will then work if you don't have the scribing, but if you do have scribing, then I would recommend getting that Soul Magic skill line going and using Sunder and Soul on the front bar. And then in the back bar, you have a choice of basically Warding Contingency, or you can go with Vigor. If you went with Echoing Vigor, you can also heal allies. That's the other alternative here. So essentially a heal here or a buff here. I really like this new skill. It's a great skill. It gives us sustain, which helps us. It gives us damage reduction. It's a big shield. It's really, really good. So those are the options there. One thing to note is that on the front skill, I will show a magicka version if you don't want to use a stamina spammable, so do stay around for that. The next thing is the champion points, and then it's going to be the sets. CP wise, we use the following: Master at Arms, more damage; Weapons Expert, more damage; Deadly Aim, more damage; Ironclad, more damage. If you wanted to, you could go and get Arcane Supremacy. This will give you more max magicka, which obviously gets boosted by our passives. It is less than the 6% damage boost, so I personally wouldn't do this, but if you really want to have a just juicy stat page, you can run this. As I said, it's not really worth it. For the red ones, we use Sustain by Suffering, so more recovery; Pain's Refuge, so damage reduction; Survival Instinct to make Sprint, Roll Dodge and Break Free cheaper; and Bastion. If you wanted to change any of these to add in Celerity, which is a really good option down here. Celerity is 10% movement speed. I would recommend that you drop the Survival Instincts and run the speed here. That is another good option, as that will give us more speed, thus help us keep alive. And for the green ones, anything you like. I always get Steed's Blessing and just some other stuff. The final thing now is to go through the sets, how this all works. And if you like these videos, then likes and comments do really, really help. And if you want to see the gameplay, then subscribing to stay up to date will be really appreciated. And as always, a massive thanks to everyone at Patreon and all the YouTube members. If you want to support, get early access, there's details down below. For the build, set-wise, we are using Crafty Alfiq. This is a staple in Magicka Sorcerer nowadays. It's more max resource, it uses the Sharpen trait, and we do a front bar, back bar push. What that means is when we're on the front bar, Crafty Alfiq is on, we swap bar, Crafty Alfiq is off. On the back bar, we don't really need the extra magicka, so it's okay to do this. The second set we then use, as you've probably gathered, is a set called Wretched Vitality. This is phenomenally good. It gives you loads of recovery, which means you can sustain really, really well. And we have an Ice Staff defending. When this is on, we get loads of sustain, and that is definitely worth considering. You can put Poison Seal or a damage glyph of choice, like a Berserk glyph. I've left that blank for you to decide. And for the front bar, I do use double dot poisons, but you can take them off. And if you take them off, A damage glyph is a really good option, or something like disease is a great option too, so glyph of foulness. For the rest of the pieces, we have Mighty Tudun as the monster set. So we have a medium helmet and medium shoulder, both are impenetrable. Max Magicka on the shoulder, Max Magicka on the helmet. I've then got a trainee chest reinforced with a prismatic glyph. I then have Crafty Alfiq sash. This is Max Magicka, impenetrable. I have Wretched Vitality hands. This is also light armor, impenetrable triglyph. Wretched Vitality glyphs. This is medium armor, impenetrable. And Wretched Vitality boots, medium armor, impenetrable. It's 1 medium, 2 medium, 3 medium, 4 medium, 1 heavy, and 2 light. So it's 4, 2, 1. You can change one of these, this Wretched gloves to be medium if you wish, but you do lose a little bit of sustain and crit chance. I quite like that personally. There's no real loss here, it's up to you. As with the jewellery, we have Crafty Alfiq amulet and ring. Both are arcane, and we've got a spell damage glyph on the neck and a weapon damage glyph on the ring. That gives us a bit of stam sustain, which helps that spammable. And we have Death Dealer's Feet arcane again, and that is also a damage glyph too. These could all be magic damage or stam damage, it makes no difference. When this works, you end up having Crafty Alfiq turn on the front bar, it turns off on the back bar, but Wretched Vitality turns on. So when we're in combat, we cast our damage buff, and we then do our brutalities or our dark deal. We've got the regens going already. We have all the sustain we need, 1500 already. With potion, almost 2000. If we change food to the citrus fillet, our magicka does drop, but we have 2.5k regen with potion. Loads of sustain, and this is all before continuous attack. So really, really good there. If you want to see a full breakdown of this, I do post a 1-page breakdown on the Patreon and on YouTube, so you can check that there. And I'm going to quickly go to the Scholarium and show you the alternative if you want a Magicka focused spammable with the scribing system. It's really worth looking at, but it will take ages to get given how hard it is to try and get all these scripts. So we're in the Scholarium. When you get here, you want to go to the altar, and what we're wanting to do is to use the Wield Soul script. So at present what we are using is physical damage, Druid's Resurgence and Breach. This is our current spammable, it's really cheap, hits hard, major minor breach, great skill. You can change this to be Magicka focus and go with a shock damage, but you'll notice that that is less. The physical is an extra 400, it's not much more, but it is less. And the physical is almost 500 stamina cheaper. It's cheaper to use the stamina skill at range than it is the magic skill, even if we have the cost reduction. The way to get the more damage on this magic skill is then to use the class Mastery, which gives us 2300 shock damage when we attack people. It is the same value as other spammables. So if we look at our resource cost, this is 2500. If we go down to something like Force Pulse, 2500. So the sustain cost is exactly the same. Crush and Shock is slightly cheaper because it is a single target and this is considered AoE. The advantage though of this is that this will hit harder than the other skills. So a good comparison is go to the Psijic Order Elemental Weapon. It's 10,000 damage. This is 9,500 plus 2,300. So you're looking essentially 11,800. This will hit harder than Elemental Weapon, and it's got Major Breach. So if you want to use a magic version, this is the alternative that you can run. And then for that contingency skill, we are using Damage Shield, Gladiator's Tenacity, and Intellect and Endurance. This gives us a big shield to us and allies, reduces our damage taken, and gives us sustain. If you want to help your allies more, you could use Growing Impact, which means allies can also benefit from that sustain as well. You'll find that the Tenacity with the Intellect, you can obviously get the sustain out of this and help your allies with it, which is nice. But it doesn't really help much because people don't run into it, but you miss a lot, so it's better to use Growing Impact if you want to boost your allies and stuff a bit more. But that's the scribe skills, and that's kind of the build really. If you have any questions about how this works, let me know in the comments below. I appreciate this video is slightly longer than usual, but with the new system I wanted to break it down much more. And I just want to say a massive thanks to all the people who support on Patreon and YouTube. It really means a lot. If you want to get exclusive builds, early access and much more, there's details down below. But as always, I'll catch you in the next video on the next stream. So thanks for watching guys, take care, and bye!